You'll start doing this question now at what's now? We'll be starting at the 4:40. We'll start discussion. Okay, your time is up. Let's check your answer. Yes, let's start. Okay, so what do you call before I start the discussion regarding the tubes, actually the files got printed and today only it came. The paper class, there's a file that's coming, so this is a file where it got printed and came. So what do you call the physical class friends you all will be getting it in this week itself. And the online class friends within this week, I'll be arranging the tubes. So what do you call with the fourth lesson tubes? You'll be getting the paper class tube as well. Uh, Probably this week or next week. For the students who are not coming to my theory class, I still have not decided on giving the tube. Okay, but if I have remaining, then yes, I will give. First of all, let me give for the theory class friends and then see if there's any balance. I doubt if there are balance, but it's. But I got the marks. Nice, 82. Oh, good job. Okay, let's check your answers. How was the question? Was it easy? Was it hard? By the way, if there's anyone of you all who doesn't know how the paper class work, all of you are supposed to maintain a separate writing book for paper class. And I'll be giving you all the questions printed. If you're coming to my theory classes, you'll be getting the questions printed. And others, I'll be anyway sharing the PDF file in the group, so that WhatsApp community. I'll be sharing the PDF there anyways. So you all can refer that and do the questions. You got 93 for the term exam. Wow, good job. I had the paper parents just waiting to get. All right. Yes, ask us any paper. Last question doesn't make sense. Huh? Let's see. Okay, let's check your answers. I'll let you know, but it's okay. Okay. Consider the following tables, database tables extracted from the database of ABC Private Education Institution. Understand the tables and their relationships and answer following questions. Okay, let's see. So they have given you here three tables. One is a student table, one is a subject table, and one is a student underscore subject table. Based on this, their questions are there. Yes, Asta, because some schools' exams are still going on. I think until August 6th, the provincial exams are going on. That's right. Okay. Write two fields suitable for the foreign keys with the name of the corresponding tables. Okay. Now, normally, if you take a database, this is what you call a database. Like if you take a database, the main purpose of the database is to store data, right? So when you take this database, it is used to store data. Okay. When you take this database, to create a database, to create this, what do you call application to store data, to create this, we have a type of application called as a DBMS. Now, for example, if you want to take a photo, what is the application you use? If you want to capture a photo, what is the application you're going to use? What's the app you're going to use in your phone or any of your devices? What is the application we use to take photos? Exactly. To take photos, we have the camera application, right? To take your photos, you have the camera application. Similarly, let's say in your phone, if you want to, let's say, what do you call, let's say you want to create a spreadsheet in your computer. Let's say in your computer, you want to create a spreadsheet. Give me an example application you can use to create spreadsheet. Perfect. To create spreadsheet, we have an application called Microsoft Excel. Similarly, to create a database, the type of application we have is something called as DBMS, which stands for Database Management System. An example for database management system is only something called as Microsoft. The short form for Microsoft is MS. Okay. So MS stands for Microsoft Access. Yes, Microsoft Word is used for word processing application or else a text document. To create a text document, you might use Microsoft Word. So just like that, what you call to create a database, the type of application we have is something called as a DBMS, which stands for a database management system. Okay, database management system. Now, if you take this DBMS example, Microsoft Access, there are like four main sections. Now, for example, if you take your phone's camera application, you might see there are some certain sections. One section you have to capture photos or pictures. Another section you have to capture videos. Okay, another section you might have something called as panorama photos. Some phones they might have slow motion videos. Like this, camera application, there are different sections we have, right? Similarly, in DBMS as well, there are four main sections. Okay, the four main sections we have are something called as forms. Then we have something called tables. Then we have something called as what you call queries. And then we have something called as reports. Okay. Now in these DBMS applications, we can create something called as forms. Forms are just like Google Forms. So you all have used Google Forms, all the stuffs, right? To submit your details. Like for example, this is also a form. For example, if I go here to let's say if I go, let's say for the Master Online website, and if I go to this login page, sign in page, this is a form, right? Look at this. This is one. The form is asking two datas. It's asking the email address. It is asking the password. And then I can submit the form. So we call this whole section as a form, right? You can enter certain datas and you can submit those datas, right? So if you take these forms, if you take this BBMS, you can use that to create forms as well. So normally a form is used for a user, for a person who is looking at that form, for a person to enter the data. So like if I take this form, I can enter my email, I can enter my password, and I can submit. Like you take Google form. Why do we create Google forms normally? I might create a Google form. Let's say no, let's say I want to what do you call let's say I have an event, and for that event, I want you all to register. I can send you all a Google form. So you all can fill that form and you all can enter your details. So mostly a form is used in order to get some details from someone. If you want someone to enter the details, we use the forms. So using forms, people can go and enter details. Okay. Once you go and enter these details, enter the data, these data are stored in tables. So tables are normally used to store data. Like if you all have not used Google Forms, you all can very easily create Google Forms. Just go to Google and search for something called forms.new. You go and click on forms.new. You can create Google form easily. Okay. So for example, let's say I'm going to create here a form. Okay. And let's say in my form, I'm going to ask some questions. Like let me put a question here saying, okay, what do you call I'm going to ask the user to enter their name. Still loading. Yeah, I'm going to ask the user to enter their name. Okay. And let's say I'm going to ask the user to select their grade. So let's say I want the grade to be a drop down, whether it's going to be grade 10 or whether it's going to be grade 11. So let's say I have made the form. I'm done making the form. I can publish this form. So let me just click on publish and yeah, publish it. Okay. So now I can share this link to another person. So a person can go and click on this link and they will be able to see a form like this and they can go and enter the data. Okay. Now I'll show you. Here is where I made the form now. In this form, you can see at the moment there are no any responses. And there's an option called link to sheets. When I go and click on this link to sheets, okay, currently you will be able to see a table. I'll show you once it's loaded. See what should we type to get in the search bar? Forms.new. Okay. So what do you call? You can see there's a table kind of structure with the headings, timestamp, name, and grade. There's no data at the moment. Okay. Now I'm going to go and fill this Google form, right? I'm going to go and enter here, for example, my name here. And let's say I'm going to go and select my grade example and I'm going to click on submit. Now, once I click on submit, what's going to happen is this Google form is going to take this data. It's still loading, I guess. It's showing a saving killer. Page is loading now. See, your response has been recorded. Now let me come and check this Google Sheet. See, now this sheet has what do you call that data stored. So you can see in tables, normally we are going to store the data that we get through forms. So this is a form. From a form, we can ask the user to enter the data. This is a form I made using Google Forms, but in DBMS, like if you take Microsoft Access, using Microsoft Access, you can make a different form. Okay, I'm not going to show that now, but you can create forms like this, and once you enter that data, it will be stored in tables like this. Okay, but more structured tables. So this is just random scenario, but it will be more structured. There will be tables, and then whatever the data you have in tables, we can obtain them as well. Like uh, for example, I can show you all a database. Let me show you all one of my database. I don't use Access. I use a different DBMS. So let me show you all my DBMS. Loading. Okay. So this is one of my DBMS. In the left side, you can see these are the names of the database. I'll go for this test database. There's no data. SPI. Okay, this has some data. Now you can see this database has multiple tables. Now from one DBMS to different DBMS, the interface might look different. Huh? How you can see the application might change. This is called a DBMS called PHP MyAdmin. For example, if I go for these users tables, these are the tables. Left side, you can see multiple names of the different tables. If I go for the users tables, currently you will be able to see that there are three users. Okay, you can see there are three users, and one thing you can notice here is there's something called type. Okay, and there is user number one is an admin, user number two is a user, user number four is admin. Okay, now this is if you take this is how a table might look like. Okay, this is one column of data, this is another column of data, and this is one row, this is another row. So these are all rows of data. Okay. So if you take this table, let's say out of now you can see this, we have every row, right? Each row of data we call as a record. So this is one record, and this is another record. Okay. And this is another record. So these are three different records in this table. Okay. Now let's say out of these three records, you can see two records are about admin and one record is about a user. Now let's say I want to opt now out of this, this table has only three records, but there will be certain tables with several records. Okay. Let's say I want to obtain the records of only where the type is admin. Okay. So I can write here query. Now I'll show you where these queries are used. I can write here something called a query. I'm going to mention here a query. I'm going to tell select all from users where let's say type is equal to admin. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to go to the table called users and it's going to give not all the records. It's going to filter the records and it's going to give me only the records where the type is equal to admin. See now, for example, if you look at the record it has given here, it has given me only two records, but users table had three records. Out of three records, it gave me only two records. It gave me the records where the type is admin. So we can write something called queries like this. These are called queries. You all don't have to know how to write queries. How to write queries is not there in your syllabus. But we can write something called queries like this on a database application and we can obtain data. So in a table, you have lots of data. Out of all the data we have, we can obtain the data what we want only. We don't have to. Now here you can see I have obtained all the columns, right? If you don't want all the column, if you want only a specific column, that's also possible. Now, for example, let's say I want only the name column. Then I'm going to edit this I'll be like, give me only the name. Select name from the users table. Now what's going to happen is from the users table, you can see it's giving me only the name of the admins. Admins names are given. So we can use something called queries like this to obtain data from a database, right? And then, so normally we take these queries. The main purpose of queries are to obtain data from the database, or as we can call this, extract data from the database. And then we have something called reports. Reports are normally used to export the data. After I have this data that's being queried, these are data that's being queried, we call this queried data. These are the queried data. So once you have the queried data, okay, once you have the queried data, I can export this. Like for example, here, you can see option called export. If I go and click on this button called export, so select the rows, export. Okay, I clicked on this export and it's loading. Now it's asking me how do you want to export it. So I'll be like this, give me as a, what do you call, quick export in Excel file, CSV file or whatever. CSV means the Excel spreadsheet file, okay? And I can just click on export here. And after click on export, you can see that data is getting downloaded. So this is a process of creating a report. So report is technically the ability for you to export your data or else download that queried data. It's like downloading or else exporting your data. That's what report is. Tell me, are you all clear about these four main components in DBMS? Yes or no? I'll clear about these four parts. These are the four main components of a DBMS. I'll clear about this. Yes or no? If you have any question, let me know chat. Exporting means sharing with others. No, exporting means downloading the data. Now, for example, these data are stored in the table in this database management system. I'm downloading that queried data. The process of downloading the queried data, like queried data is like filtering the data. After you filter that data, the process of downloading that data or exporting that data, that's what you call as a report. You don't have to know how to write query. You just have to know the purpose of query. The purpose of query is to obtain data from a database. The query is basically obtaining a data from database. I'll show a large data example and also a small example. No? I'll show big data example. Huh? Now, for example, let's say I have data like this. I'll show you all the 2024 results. Now, this is a data of um, yeah. This is a data about certain students who got A for maths and A for ICT. Okay. No, let's say, but you call there are some students who have got 7 A's, there are students who have got 8 A's, there are students who have got 6 A's, there are students who have got 9 A's, there are students who have got different number of A's. No? Let's say I want the names of students who have got 9 A's only. Okay, out of all these list of names here, I want the students who have got 9 A's. So what I can do, I'm going to write here query. Even in Google Sheets, you can write query actually. I'm going to write here query saying, okay, I'm going to write here query saying from that set of data we have here, okay, from the set of data we have here, I want you to give me the, let's say, select which columns. We have multiple columns. I want the column B data and column C data. Column B has a first name, column C has a last name. I'm asking you to give me the column B and C data where the column F now has a total list. So where column F has 9A. So where column F is equal to 9A. Now what's going to happen from all the list of data as we have, it's going to what you call filter and it's giving me only the students who is 9s. So there are 31 students here who have got 9s. So from a table, if you're going to filter and obtain data, that process of filtering and obtaining data is what you call as query. So I have written, this is the query I have written here. You don't have, in your syllabus, you all don't have to learn how to write queries. Okay? But the purpose of query is to obtain data from a table. or from the database. Is that clear? Got the idea of query? Okay, perfect. So keeping this aside, now we have something called tables, right? In these tables, when you're storing data, what do you call? You might notice there are different columns. Now there are when I'm storing the data, there is like indirectly a question being asked from the user. Like for example, you can see here we're asking a question. We're asking what is your name, what is your grade. Okay, so when you're entering, when you want to, when you're taking a table, when I want to enter a new record, when I want to enter new data, I have to supply these two values. I have to mention what is the name, I have to mention what is the grade. Like these are like the questions that is being asked, right? These are the questions that is being asked, and I'm entering a new record, right? So normally, for example, if you look at this table, students table as well, if you in the students table, if I want to add a new record, if I want to add a new data here, I have to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to answer 5 different questions, right? I have to mention the new records. What is that person's student number? The new person's, what is this person's name? The new person, what is his date of birth? The new person, what is that person's gender? The new person, what is that person's telephone number? So when I'm entering a new data, I have to give 4 details, right? So these are something what we call as a field. In a table, the values you're entering a new record, there are certain things that you give, right? Those are what we call as a field. So indirectly, I can tell you fields are like columns of a table, but the actual meaning of fields are like these questions that are being asked when you're entering a new data. So this is one field, this is another field, this is another field, this is another field, this is another field. Okay. So you can tell students the students table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. Similarly, tell me if you take a subject table, how many fields can you see in a subject table? Look at the subject table and tell me in a subject table, how many fields are there? Perfect. The subject table has 4 fields. Okay, these are called fields of table. Subject table has 4 fields, right? And a student underscore subject, you can see it has 2 fields. One field, another field, right? So keep in mind, these are called fields of a table. So these are called fields, and the rows containing data, we can, how do we call that as? I told you a while ago. The rows, each row containing a data. A special name we give for each of these rows. Perfect. Each of these rows are called a record. Okay. So if you take what you call the students table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. Okay. And how many records are there? The students table has 5 fields. And how many records? So this is one record. This is another record. 2, 3 records, 4 records, and 5 records. Yes, the students table has 5 records. So each of the row containing data, we call them as a record. So subject table has again 5 records. Students table has again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 records are there in the student underscore subject table. So these are called records of a table. Okay. Now out of these fields in a table, there is 2 special fields. I told you fields are basically the columns in a table now. And I told you all records are actually the rows in a table, rows containing data, not all the rows, just the rows containing data. So the header we ignore. Okay. So I told you about fields and I told you about records. Now, out of these fields we have in a table, there is a special type of field we call as a, there are 2 special fields we have. One special field is something called as a primary key, and there's another special field called as a foreign key. So let me explain you the difference between a primary key and a foreign key. Okay. Normally, this primary key is the unique field of a table. Like out of all the fields we have, that is the unique field. And if you're asking me what is the purpose of this primary key, the purpose of this primary key is to identify records. Like for example, if you look at this first record in the students table, okay, if I come and ask you, okay, the first record in the students table, just highlighted here, it is about whom? What is that record about? You might come and tell, okay, that record is about Anupama. Okay. If I look at the third record here, you'll be like, okay, the third record is about Devinder. The fourth record, you'll be like, it's about Praneeth. That's how you explain. No? So to explain the record, when I come and ask, okay, what is the third record about? You'll be like, the third record is about Praneeth. But there's a problem. Now imagine in this school, so the school's database of ABC private institutes particular database. Let's say in this institute there was a student called, no, in the given data these are the five students, but practically there could be more students. No, let's say there is a student called Praneeth who was born in 1994, and let's say there's another student called Praneeth as well, but this Praneeth is born in, let's say, 1999. Okay, and let's say he's a male again, and let's say this is his number. I will use a random number, random date of birth, random. Now, if I'm going to use the name to identify records, how will my explanation be? I will be like, the fifth record is about a student called Praneeth. Sixth record is about a student called Praneeth. So if I'm going to use the name to explain each record, there's a problem you can see. For this student and this student, I will be using the same explanation, right? I'll be like, this is the fifth record is about Praneeth, sixth record is about Praneeth. But tell me, is a fifth and sixth student, are they actually both the peeps, both the same people? The what you call S05 student and S06 student, are they the same person? No, no, they're two different people. Exactly, they're two different people. This is a Praneeth who is born in 1994. The last record is a Praneeth who is born in 1999. So these are two different people. So when you're explaining these records, one thing you have to make sure is your explanation. Explaining each record, your explanation has to be unique. Okay. So indirectly, what I mean by this is, identifying the records, your identification has to be unique. So if I'm going to use a student's name to identify, there is a problem. You can see the name is a value that can repeat. Now, tell me, is it suitable to use a date of birth to identify? Like, can I tell, okay, the first record is about a person born in 1994, August 3rd. The second record is about a student born in 1995, December 5th. The third record is about a student born in 1997. Can I use the date of birth to explain each record? If I use the date of birth to explain, will I be able to guarantee and tell all the students will have a unique date of birth? Is it suitable to use the date of birth? No. Is it suitable to use a gender? Again, no. Is it suitable to use a phone number? Can we guarantee that all the students will have a unique phone number? Actually, no. The reason is because imagine there's twins, and the twins are being, or let's say brothers and sisters joining for the academy, for the institute. Okay. So sometimes what will happen is normally when you all are joining for the institutes, like let's say for classes, all the stuffs, most of the telephone number you will be providing is a parent's number. So sometimes there will be two students. Let's say your my name might be there, and your brother's name might be there, or your name might be there, and your sister's name might be there. For both of you, the telephone number is going to be the same, right? Both of you are going to give us a parent's number. You all don't have a phone at this age, so you all are going to give a parent's number. So telephone number is also a value that can repeat. Okay. So technically, if you take the student's name, date of birth, gender, telephone number, these are all fields that can have repetitive data. But if you look at this value called student number, normally student number is something like admission number you get in school. Whenever you're going to register in school, they give you a number which is unique for you. Only you will have that student's number, right? So every student obviously is going to have a unique student number, right? So tell me, is it suitable to use the student number to identify the records in student's table? Like I tell, okay, the first record is about student number one. The second record is about student number two. The third record is about student number three. If I use a student number, is that suitable to identify the records? Yes. So here I can identify the records using student number. Therefore, the student number field, that unique field of the table, which is used to identify records, we call that as a primary key. Is that clear, all of you? Okay. That's how you identify the primary key. The purpose of a primary key is to make sure it is the unique field of a table used to identify the records. Clear? Okay. Look at, based on that idea, tell me what do you think is the primary key of the subject table? In primary key is the unique field of a table. That means a column that's going to contain unique data probably. And it's going to contain what you called, it's going to use to be identify the records. So what is a primary key in a subject table? Perfect. Only the first two questions in the physical class. Very much. Exactly. Here, the most suitable field we can take as a primary key is a subject number. So subject number is going to be considered as a primary key in the subject table. Now, tell me, look at the student underscore subject table and tell me, in this table, is it suitable to take, we have two fields, is it suitable to take only the student number, or else is it suitable to take only the subject number? Only one field can be used here to identify the records uniquely. No, because if you see the student number field, right? If you look at the student number field, you can see here also have S01. Here also I have S01. So if I go and tell the first record is about student number one, second record is about student number two, third record is about student number three, fourth record is about student number one. If I tell student number one, you can see there's a repetition. But I told you when you're explaining every record, your explanation has to be unique, right? I can't have a repetition. So if I use only the student number, you can see there's a repetition here and here. There's a repetition here and here. Okay, so S02 is repeating, S01 is repeating. On the other hand side, if I go and take subject number is also repeating. So you can see subject number one is here also there, subject number one is here also there, subject number three is here also there, subject number three is here also there. So you can see the subject number is also a value that can repeat. Okay. So in that case, when you take this table, what do you call? Yes, up here. Okay. If you take this table, you can see student number is also a value that's repeating. Subject number is also a value that is repeating. So there is no one specific field we can use to identify records. So it is a situation like this. Imagine you have a classroom. In the classroom, let's say there are several students, and let's say normally the teacher uses the first name to call you. Like for example, let's say in this classroom we have a student called Amal Pereira. There's a person called, let's say, Bimal Silva, and there's a person called Kamal Pereira, and there's another person called Amal Fernando. So let's say there's a classroom with four students. Now, when the teacher has to call Bimal, she might tell, okay, Bimal, can you come here? When the teacher has to call Kamal, she'll be like, Kamal, can you come here? But when she is calling Amal, will you think she might tell only Amal, or will you think she might take Amal, or will you think she might tell only the first name, or will she tell first name plus last name, only F or F plus L? If they have to call Amal, what do you think they will do? Will they use only the first name, or will they use first name and last name both? Exactly. When they have to call Amal, they might use the first name and last name both, so that they can be more precise for whom they are calling. Right. Similarly, when you're identifying records here, even though we can't tell, okay, the first record is about student number one, second record is about student number two, you can see this record is talking about a student underscore subject, which means a student joining a specific subject, right? Student, and this is talking about a connection between the student and subject. So if you look at the table, you can go and explain the record like this. You can tell the first record is about student number one joining subject one, or enrolling for subject number one. The one, two, three, four. The fourth record is about student number one joining for subject number four, right? Or as you can tell here, the first record is about student number one joining subject number one. The second record is about student number two joining subject one. Okay. See, now if I'm explaining like that, if I'm going to use the student number and subject number, if I'm going to use both to explain every records, as a pair, are they repeating? Like both together, is there a repetition? Student number one and subject number together again, can we get student number one and subject number one? No. Even though subject number one, subject number three is repeating, here also we have subject number three. So that means different color there. Even though here also we have subject number three, even though here also we have subject number three, and here also we have subject number three. Are all these subject number three talking about the same student? No, it's six sorry, three different students. Okay. So if you notice here, even though we can't use one field to identify the records, here we can use a collection of multiple fields. We can use two fields together. Okay. So normally when you want to identify records, you go and first of all see, can we take one field to identify the records? If you can't identify the records one field, you see with two fields can I? If you can't uniquely identify using two fields, then you go for three fields. If you can't for three fields, four fields, like that you go in the ascending order. First of all, you always know in the students table and subject table, we were able to identify every records using one field. So when you can't in a student underscore subject, we can't with one field. Why? With one field, there is repetition. So when you can't with one field, you go for two fields. If you're going to use multiple fields to identify records, then these primary key. So here the primary key is going to be student number and subject number both together. Both together has to be used to identify every records uniquely. So if you have to use multiple records together to identify records uniquely, there is a special name for this primary key. We call these primary keys as a composite primary key. Again, a composite primary key is also a type of primary key only. The only difference between composite primary key and normal primary key is a composite primary key uses more than one field to identify records. A normal primary key will use only one field to identify records. Again, both are primary keys. Huh? This was a primary key, that's also a primary key. So if you ask me, what is the primary key of the student underscore subject? The primary key is going to be student number plus subject number, both together. So if I want to explain every record, I can't just use only the student number. I should use student number and subject number. So for example, if I'm explaining the records, I'll be like, the first record is about student number one joining subject one. Second record is about student number two joining subject one. Third record is about student number three joining subject three. To explain my records, I'm going to use both the fields. So when I'm going to explain using multiple fields, that is what we call as a composite primary key. Is that clear of you? Why subject table subject can't be the primary key? Because, for example, here we're talking about subjects, right? Now, here we're talking about, let's say, what you call English 1 year course, ICT 2 year course, right? Now, imagine, for example, we have this word called ICT. Okay. Now, if you all know, there is a news that's being, what you call currently there, then they're going to, for A levels, not for your batch, for 2029 A levels. That is why they're in grade 6 now. For those people, when they come for A levels, they're going to stop this subject called ICT and they're going to introduce for A levels a subject called computer science. And they're going to introduce another subject called, what do you call, data science. Likewise, they're going to include certain subject for A levels. So imagine the institute has decided, okay, there's a subject called ICT. No, hereafter, we're going to change the name of ICT to computer science. Now you can see the value of that is changing. When you take a primary key, apart from primary key being unique, there's another feature of primary key. The value of a primary key should never change. So if it is a value that can change, it is not suitable to be used as a primary key. That is another reason why student's name is also not suitable for primary key. Because student's name, I mean, there will be not a practical scenario where always it will change, but it's possible to change. Now, so for example, let's say a person went and changed his name, you can go and change. Legally, you can go and change the name. So if you have gone and changed your name, that means the value gets changed, right? So without taking primary key, apart from thinking about the uniqueness, another thing you have to keep in your mind is the value of a primary key should never change. Got it? Subject names can change. They can go and change the name for English to English language in the future. Because let's say they want to, let's say in the future they want to include a new course called English literature. So when they want to include a new course called English literature, they have been thinking that okay, if they include English and English literature, give me a minute, guys. Okay. So let's say they have decided to include a new subject called English literature, and the school has decided, okay, so the institute has decided if they have a course called English and English literature, people might get confused. So let's change the name of this to English language, and then let's include a new course called English literature. So now you can see the value of the subject is being modified, but primary key values can never change. Now does it make sense? Why it's not suitable? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so that is what primary key is. On the other hand side, we have something called as a what do you call foreign key. Now, foreign key is basically referring to another table's primary key. So when you say the word called foreign key, always foreign key refers to another table's primary key. So always, if you take a foreign key, it has to be a primary key of another table. Like for example, if you want to find a foreign key, the easiest method is first of all find the primary key. After you have found the primary key, finding the foreign key is very easy. Because why? Always a foreign key is another table's primary key. No? Now I know that student number is a primary key here. That student number is a primary key in a student's table. Tell me, do we have the student number field, the data called student number? Do we have the student number mentioned in other table? Can we see the student number field in any other tables? Yes. In which table can you see the student number field? Okay, I'll number this table, table number 1, table number 2, and table number 3. In which table can you see that student number field? Exactly. You can see in table number 3. See in table number 3, the student number is there. So when a primary key, if it is mentioned in another table, in the other table, it becomes a foreign key. So this fellow here, the student number field here it becomes a foreign key. The student number field here is a foreign key. Similarly, in the subject table, we have subject number as a primary key, right? Tell me, do we have the subject number field in any other tables? The primary key of the subject table, do we have this primary key mentioned in any other tables? The subject number, has it been referenced in any other tables? Yes. Which table? Table 1, table or table 3? Other tables mean 1 or 3. In which table do we have that subject number referenced? Exactly. You can see in sub table number 3, it's mentioned. So the subject number in the student table, this is another foreign key. So if you look at this table, we have two foreign keys. One foreign key is basically student number in subject table. Second foreign key is subject number in the student number is student underscore subject table. The second foreign key is subject number in the student underscore subject table. The student number is also a primary key, right? So we can get it as a foreign key. The student number is also a primary key, right? So how can we get it as a foreign key? That is not a problem. So obviously, what you call a foreign key is basically another table's primary key. So you go and check, is it a primary key of another table? Your question has to be, is this a primary key of another table? Is this a primary key of another table? Yes. Which table? Student's table. So it can be a foreign key. You go and check, is this a foreign key of, is it a primary key of another table? Yes. Where? Here. So if that field is a primary key of another table, it's pass. Always a foreign key has to be another table's primary key. Got it? But in the third table, it's a primary key. No. In the third table, student number is not a primary key. No. In the third table, what is the primary key? The third table's primary key is student number plus student number plus subject number. This is the primary key, not only student number. I told only student number is not a primary key. Only student number is repetition. A01, A01 is repeating. So only student number is not a primary key here. The primary key here is student number plus subject number. This is the primary key of the third table. Okay, then I'll check later. Umir, go and watch the recording of this session. Beginning is all about that only. Okay, perfect. So what do you call the first question is asking write two fields suitable for foreign keys in the with the name of the corresponding table. So for that you can mention one is what do you call the student number in the, so let me put the question number 3 here. Roman number 1, A. So one answer you can mention there is one of the foreign keys we have is student underscore std underscore number in student underscore subject table. This is one of the foreign keys we have. The other foreign key we have is subject underscore number in the student underscore subject table. These are the two foreign keys we have. You got this correct, half marks each. If you have any doubts, drop in the chat. Roman, question number B. Question B. I wrote both together. You mean student number and subject number in student's table? Something like that. Don't write both together, write it separately. Write down the appropriate primary key for the above student underscore subject table. So we found out the primary key of student underscore subject. The primary key is student underscore number, student underscore number plus subject number both together. This is the primary key of the student underscore subject table. So if you just mention as it is like this, you're good to go. Good, 1 mark there. Again, if you have any questions, drop in the chat. Roman number 2. Roman number 2 is saying, which tables should be joined to run a query to find the amount that Anupama has to pay to the institute? Okay, again, I told you, query means obtaining data from the database. Okay, right? So obtaining data from the database means just getting data from the table. No. Now, when you're getting data from the table, right? I showed you queries where I took data only from one table. But when you're writing queries, you can get the data from multiple tables as well, which means you can join the data from multiple tables. I can show you all an example. For example, let's say dun, 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 dun. Okay, we have a table called house underscore user, right? This table, this is a table, okay? This table is called house underscore, the name of this table is something called house underscore user, right? It has three fields, ID, user ID, and house number. Tell me, in this table, are you able to see the user's name? Based on what you can see here, tell me, can you see the user's name anywhere here? No, right? Okay. Let me show you how I can get the user's name here, right? So for this, we have something called joining tables. Huh? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be like, without giving me all the data in this from the house user, give me the user. I want to join. So I'll be like, select all from house user. No, select from the house user table. Let's say I don't want all the tables. I want only the house number table. So I'll be like house underscore number. Select house underscore number. House underscore number. H dot house number, comma. How is the names I have in users table? In users table, the names are there is name. Okay. So I'll be like, comma, u dot name from house user h left join. That's the name of this table. Users. Left join users on user dot id. Forget about what I'm typing here. Ignore the typing. I'll show you the results directly. Where user ID is equal to h dot user ID. If you want, I can explain this query, but again, query is not there in your syllabus. You will learn this in A levels. So focus here. Okay. I'll just explain it. Okay? So what I'm saying from here is I'm telling to give me two datas. One is a house number and the username. Okay. From this house underscore user table, right? So I'll just show you how the house underscore user table is. So these are how the house underscore user table is. So it has three records. It has three fields: ID, user ID, house number. Out of these three fields, I'm just saying I want only the house number. So I'm saying I want the house number. Okay. Along with the house number, I want the user's name. So I don't mention how to get the user's name. I'm like to get the user's name. What you can do is you go for the join the users table. So how are you going to join the users table is so there's something called join statements. Okay, these are A levels you'll be learning. If you don't understand now, forget it. I'm saying join the users table, and then I'm mentioning how to join. Anyway, there's a way you can link both these tables. How you can connect these both tables where the user ID is equal to the users table has a field called ID. The users table you can see there's a field called ID here. Obviously, you can join the table by taking the users table ID field and matching that users table ID field with the house user table's user ID field. That's what I wrote here. Again, you don't have to know about this query. I just run this query and show how it will look like. Unknown column u dot name. User space u should come in. So current selection. Okay. Now you can see here when it's giving me the data, it's giving me the house number, and along with the house number, it's giving the name. Now you can see that I mentioned house number 5 is John Doe's, right? Let's verify and see is it correct. If you come back to that previous table, you can see here the house number 5. Okay, you can see here house number 5. It is owned by user ID 2, right? And if you go and look at the users table, you will know the user ID called 2. See the user ID called 2. His name is John Doe. So what I have done here is I have done something called join query where I'm to get some data. Now, this data called name was not there initially in this table called house user. So I'm joining two tables and I'm filtering and getting data. So when you're querying data, when you're obtaining data from a database without getting data from only one table, you can make this database management system go through multiple tables and give you the data. Okay. But now whatever I said for you all this time, you all don't have to remember any of this. I'll just give you all a simple, easy way of how to remember queries. Okay, how to handle these questions regarding queries. Whenever you get a question regarding query, whenever they ask you what are the tables that has to be joined to run a query, always think like this. Think like a human. Think, when you take this purpose thing called query, the purpose of a query is to obtain some data from the database. So here you see what is the purpose of this query. Here they have mentioned the purpose of this query is to find the amount that Anupama has to pay for the institute. Now, if you are given these three tables as data, if I ask you how much Anupama has to pay for the institute, what is the first table you're going to go out of the three tables? So we have one table called table 1, table 2, and table 3, right? Out of table 1, 2, 3, which table are you going to go through first? If I ask you to find out what is Anupama's, what do you call the amount she has to pay? Looking at this table, you can just go through these three tables and you can figure out certain data, right? Now, if I ask you how much Anupama has to pay, just go through this table and see how much Anupama has to pay. Exactly. But the first thing you might do is you might go through table 1. In table 1, what is the data we need? In table 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Out of these 5 columns, what is the data we actually need? Exactly. We go for the table 1 and we are going to find what is Anupama's student number. Now, when I went through this first table, I found out Anupama's student number is S01. After I have Anupama's student number, after I have this data, I have the data now. I know Anupama's student is S01. After I know Anupama's student number is S01, next, where should I go? Which table? Yes, I had to go to table number 3. In the table number 3, I had to go and check what are the subjects Anupama has joined. I can go and see here. Anupama has joined subject number 1. Anupama has joined subject number 4. These are the two subjects S01 has joined. After I know Anupama has joined subject 1 and subject 4, next, where should I go? I found out Anupama has joined these two subjects, right? Where should I go? Which table should I go? Table 1, table 2, or table 3? Correct. Now I have to go for table 2. In table 2, I'm going to go and find what is the price for subject 1. So you can see subject 1, the price of that is 15,000. Subject 4, the price of that is again 15,000. So then I will know, okay, Anupama has to pay 30,000 as a fees. So for me to get this 30,000 value, I had to go through all three tables. I had to go through the student table and find her student number. I had to go through the student underscore subject table and find out the subject numbers she has got enrolled for. I had to go to the subject table and find the amount. So for me to exactly get the amount that Anupama has to pay, I had to go through all three tables, right? So always when you get a query question, you see practically if you were supposed to find the answer, what are the tables you have to go through? So the tables you have to go through, they have to be joined. So technically for this question, you have to go through all three tables. So answer is going to be all three tables. Don't mention just all three tables. Mention the table names. So the answer for that question would be student table, comma, subject table. The order has doesn't have to be I mean the order it has you can mess up the order, not a problem. So student table, subject table, and student underscore subject. All three tables has to be gone through to find the answer. That's how you find the answer for this question. Is that clear all of you? We mention all tables depending on who's marking your paper. If I am marking a paper, probably I might not give marks. Depends on who's marking the paper. Be precise with the table names. Again, depends. Sometimes we might give marks. Sometimes we might not give marks. Better mention all three tables names. Okay, so that's how you find the query. If you have any questions, drop in the chat. Again, if I got this correct, sorry, you can put 2 marks there. Next, Sandeepa's twin sister. So there's a person called Sandeepa, it seems. Sandeepa's twin sister Renuka was newly enrolled to the institute to study technology. What important, anyone? Okay. So Renuka has what you call plan to study technology. The question is mentioned here, which table should be updated? Now, if you notice this situation, Sandeep is already a registered student. But Sandeepa's twin sister, okay, they have mentioned Sandeepa's twin sister is newly enrolled to the institute. So to show that there's a new student, to show in this table that there's going to be a new student called Renuka, which table should I update? To show that there's a new student called Renuka, which table I have to update? When I say the word update, there are two meanings for the word called update. The word update, when I say updating a table, okay, when you say update a table, the two possibilities. One is you can modify an existing data. Another meaning for update a table is insert a new data, insert a new record. Both of them means update. So if someone comes in, what table has to be updated, you have to go and check, is there any current data that has to be modified or is there any new data that has to be made? Exactly. The table that has to get updated here is a students table. In the students table, I have to go and mention that there's going to be a new student called Renuka. Okay, so one of the table that has to get updated is obviously going to be the students table. One of the tables that has to get updated here is the students table. Now, apart from the students table, they have also mentioned, apart from telling that there's a new student called Renuka, they have also mentioned that Renuka is going to join technology. Look at the subject table and tell me, is there a subject called technology already available? It is student underscore subject. Foreign keys and other tables primary key. Man. Student number here and subject number here, these are primary keys. The question is asking primary key. The question is asking foreign keys. So foreign keys are, this is one foreign key, this is another foreign key. So these two answers are correct. Anyways, what you called, yeah. Apart from modifying the students table, if you look at the technology, yes, you can see technology, it's already a field that is there. And they have not told the subject name is changing. So subject number is changing. They have not told subject name is changing. They have not told the duration is changing. They have not told the fees is changing. So there is, if you go and see, are there any changes to be done in the subject table? Nothing. We don't have to do any changes, or because what do you call one thing? Technology is already there, and the question has not given any data about the word technology or the subject called technology being changed. But they have mentioned one another data there. They have told that Renuka is going to enroll to the institute to study subject. So out of these three tables, out of table one, table two, and table three, tell me which table shows that this student has been enrolled for this subject. Which table shows the enrollment? Table one, table two, or table three? Subject number is not table name. The table name is student underscore subject. Exactly. Okay. So how that's going to work is you update the third table with this student underscore subject table. Okay. The third table I had to go and show a student called Renuka. So I might enter here Renuka's new admission number. So for example, let's say Renuka is S06. This was the example data I wrote here for fun and for explanation purpose. So if there's a new record, I'll be like the ascending order, ascending order. So after S05, the next person S06. So let's say S06 is going to be Renuka. Then I might mention it as a student called S06, and that person will enter for technology. Technology is what? Subject 3. So this is how I might show the enrollment of Renuka joining subject 3 or Renuka joining technology, right? So therefore, to show that part of them enrolling for a subject, I have to update the student underscore subject table. So if you mention like this, student table, comma, student underscore subject table, if you mention like this, again, only both of these answer. If you mention all three tables name, 0 marks. If you mention only one table's name, also 0 marks. Exactly if you mention these two tables name, you get 1 mark there. If you have any questions, drop in the chat. These are two tables that has to get updated. Then the question B is saying, write down the new record or records that has to be added for the tables concerned for A above. Okay, they're asking to show the table and they're asking to follow this format. I'll show you what this format is below. Okay. So you're going to show the new record. In first of all, mention the table name and field. Now let's go all in the order value. When I'm answering that question, I told you, first of all, the students table has to get updated. So first of all, let's show how to make the update in the students table. So I'm going to mention here that there's an update that has to be done to the students table. So first of all, you mention the table name. So I'll be like, there's a table called students table. Mention the table name. After mention the table name, put arrowhead in front. And then you have to mention every field's value. In the students table, the first field contains the student number. And always we go in ascending order. If it's a primary key, normally they'll be go in ascending order. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can guess. There are two ways. If a data is not given, there are two ways you can think what the data would be. One thing is if it is a primary key, probably in ascending order. So you can guess and tell, okay, after S05, definitely it should be S06. Or else sometimes in the question itself, they might tell you the new student's ID. If you look at the question below, they have not mentioned what is Renuka's ID. So we can guess and write here, maybe Renuka's ID is S06. So that is the data that has to come to the first field. The second field has a student's name. Student's name is what they have mentioned here, Renuka. So I put comma Renuka. In the students table, the third field contains date of birth, fourth field gender, fifth field telephone number. Now, directly the question has not mentioned what is Renuka's date of birth, what is Renuka's gender, what is Renuka's telephone number. Even though they have not mentioned that directly, they have given you a hint. The hint they have given you is Renuka is Sandeepa's twin sisters or Sandeepa's twin sister. So if Renuka is Sandeepa's twin sister, there's something you can guess. If it's a twins, okay, obviously they said Renuka is Sandeepa's twin sister. So sister means obviously Renuka has to be a female. Okay. But apart from that, if it's a twin, obviously the date of birth is going to be the same. And telephone number, most probably they might include their parents' number. So telephone number also can be the same, right? So this is where your user logics. Sometimes in certain questions, the questions will not give all the data, but if you look at the question properly, there might be a hint they would have given. Why subject table will not change for the question number 3A? Okay, if you're telling subject table has to be changed, when I say change, there are two possible change. One change is you go and modify existing data. Another change is you have to go and insert a new data. Okay, let me call this as, let's say, X and let me call this Y. Okay, tell me what is the change that you think has to be done for the subject table? The existing data has to be modified, or should a new data be created? If you're asking me why they're not updating the subject table, what do you think we have to update in the subject table? X or Y? Should we modify any existing data, or should we include a new data? What is the change we should do for the subject table? Is there any change to be done? No, right? So whenever you are thinking about should we update this table, there are two questions to ask. Is there any existing data I have to update, or is there new data I add? So they have not mentioned anything about existing data being changed. And if you ask me, are they talking about new data? No. Because why? Technology is already a data given. So because technology is already a subject given, there is no changes to be made in the subject table. It's already a subject that's available. Makes sense? Anyways, coming back here, if you take Renuka because they are twins, obviously the date of birth is going to be same, contact number is going to be the same. So I'm going to mention the same date of birth of Sandeepa, that's 99 Sandeepa, 95,612. Next one contains gender, that's female. The last one contains the contact number, that is 078 765 3021. So this is how you show the update for the students table. But in that question, not only students table is updated, we have another table updating as well. Along with the students table getting updated, we also have the student underscore subject table getting changed. So I had to show how the student underscore subject gets modified as well. So I'll be like, student underscore subject table will get modified like this. This has two records, two fields. One is student number, one is subject number. So I'll be like, the data in the first field should be student number. No? Renuka student number is S06. And second field contains subject number. What is technology subject number? Because they have mentioned she's joining technology. No? To study technology, the subject number is going to be subject number 3. So I'm going to mention this as sub 3. This is how you show the two tables update. Anyone having any questions here? Can we write those updates within brackets rather, or should we draw a table for it? In this question, they have clearly mentioned to use this format, table name and field 1, field 2 format. So I would recommend you, now here this table has you mentioned, and the question has mentioned to use this format, so it's compulsory for you to use this format, table name and field 1, field 2 value. If a question has not mentioned, you have the freedom to choose this format or table format. But if you're asking what is my preference, I always prefer going in this format. Table name, field 1, field 2, field 3, field 4, field 5 value. Table name, field 1, field 2 value. So this is the most recommended format. But if the question has not mentioned which format to follow, you can decide. Okay. When a question comes regarding that, I'll tell you. Anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, ask. So if you mention the students table update properly, you get half marks. If you mention student underscore subject tables update properly, you get another half marks. If there's any other questions, drop in the chat. Next, Roman number 4. In Roman number 4, they have said, Praneeth is willing to change the subject from technology to ICT. Which table needs to be updated? Okay. Look at the what you call database and tell me, out of all three tables, which table actually has the record telling Praneeth is joining technology? out of table 1, table 2, table 3, which table is actually storing the data that there is a student called Praneeth, and the student called Praneeth is joining the subject called technology. Correct. It's actually the table number 3. In table number 3, you can go and see Praneeth. Praneeth is actually what? S05, right? You can go and see the S05 is joining subject 3. This is the last record is signifying that. Okay. So if you want to go and tell that Praneeth is not going to join technology, he's going to change from technology to ICT, what should happen? I should go and change the subject 3 to ICT subject. What is actually ICT subject number? What is the subject number for ICT? Exactly. You can see here ICT subject number is sub 2. So I had to go and change this from what do you call sub 3, I had to go and change it to sub 2. So that is the only change I should do. Apart from that, there is no other changes. That is the only change I should do. I should come here and I should go and change from sub 3 to sub 2, right? So I'm going to mention which table needs to update only the student underscore subject table. So for the row number 4, okay, for the row number 4, we say only the student underscore subject table has to be modified. And the question B, I guess, is asking the modification. Yeah, question B is asking to show the modification. So I'm going to say the modification that has to be done is to go for the student underscore subject table. And in this student underscore subject table, we have two values now. The first field contains student ID, student number. Second field contains table number. So I'm taking the place where we have S05, go and make it S0. So subject 2. Okay. So the question is saying write the new record or records to be added to the table concerned forever. Be the new record. That's the subject 2 is different to ICT. S05 is regarding Praneeth. So this is the update that has to be noted. If you had mentioned this like this, 1 mark for A, 1 mark for B. If you have any doubts, drop in the chat. Huh? At the end of the year, the database should be changed to show the results obtained by the students for the subjects they are studying. Write your best suggestion for this. Okay, now they are saying at the end of the year, we want to show. Now, what do you call at the end of the year, right? At the end of the year, at the end of the year, yeah. At the end of the year, the database should be changed to show the results obtained by the students for the subject they are studying. Write your best suggestion for this. Now, we actually have a question there. It's a minimal, there's a small data unavailability. There are certain courses which are for 2 years, and there are certain courses for 1 year. So there is a question here. Are they going to have, like for the 2 year course? For the 2 year course, are we going to have what do you call one result after the year 1 and one result of the year 2? So are we going to have what do you call two different results for the 2 year courses? Or are we going to have only an exam and when they're going to complete it, there's a question. So let's answer for both the situation. Huh? So let's talk about situation 1. So let's say situation 1. I'll show you both the answers. So situation 1 is where, or let's say assumption 1 is where, what do you call, let's imagine assumption 1 is where a student will have the exam, will have an exam only at the end of the course. Assumption 2 is where a student will have exam after every year. You all don't have to mention assumption 1, assumption 2. I'm just saying two possible answers because two people can think it two different ways. There are more possible ways as well. These are the two common ways you would answer. I would have given answer number one or answer number two. I did still mention the answer. I'm just showing the assumption. So if a student is going to have an exam after every year, let's see, and if the student is going to have are they asking about charge? No, man. They're asking what has to be done for this database, okay, to show the results obtained by the students for the subject they're studying. So now, if they're going to have an exam after every, let's go for assumption one. If they're going to have what do you call exam only at the end of the course, then what will happen is every enrollment will have exam, right? Now, for example, if a student has got enrolled for this, if they have mentioned S01 has got enrolled for subject 4, at the completion of subject 4, they're going to have an exam result. If they say S02 is going to join a subject 5, at the completion of subject 5, they're going to have an exam, which means every enrollment, at the end of every enrollment, they're going to have an exam, right? So to show the results they got for that exam, what I can do, I can add a new column for the student underscore subject table called result. So by default, everyone's result is going to be empty. So normally to represent empty in a database, we use a word called null. Okay. So by default, all of their results are going to be null, 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 null. Which means none of them have a result. The word null means no value. Null means no value. Like if you would have noticed in this table, someone there called null here, NULL killer. Null means these two doesn't have value. If someone doesn't have value, the value comes as null. So by default, let's say it's null. And at the end of the enrollment, at the end of that, for example, you can see this row. This row is talking about student number one joining subject four. Subject four is account. So accounting is a 2 years course. So let's say at the end of this 2 year course, they're going to have exam. That exam's result, we go and mention, yeah, okay, they got A, the B, the C, the or 100, the mark. We not mention is it A, B, C or 90 or whatever. So that is one way. So if the student is going to have an exam at the end of every enrollment, then the modification you can do is we can tell add a field called result, add a field called result to the student underscore subject table. So if you add a field called result to the student underscore subject table, now what you can do is at the end of every enrollment, they will be given an exam and the results they got for the exam, they will come and modify. Tell me, I'll clear about this answer. Is that clear? Right. And now, before I tell my answer, I want you all to tell your answer. Imagine uh, a student will have an exam after every year. That means, for example, if it's a 2 years course, at the end of the first year, they'll have one exam. At the end of second year, they'll have one exam. If it's a 4 year course, at the end of first year, they'll have one exam, second year, one exam, third year, one exam, fourth exam. If they're going to have something like that, after every year, they're going to have an exam. What do you think is a solution we can give to store that data? How can we store that results? Where should we store that result? What should we do? What should we modify in this database to store that result? Think and tell me your answer for the assumption too. Can create a different database. No, we don't create a different database. You're close to the answer. Okay, we can create another table. Fine. Yes. We can create another table. Exactly. We can create another table. You don't have to modify. We can't modify the table 3. No, we can't modify the table 3 because if you modify the table 3 can store only one result. Now, for example, if it's a 2 years course, now for example, if this situation, okay, is S01, the joining subject for the 2 years course. So if you're going to have two results, for after end of 1 year, there'll be one result. At the end of 2 years, there'll be another result. Imagine it's a 5 years course. If it's a 5 years course, here you have duration, right? If it's a 5 years course, for a 5 year course, there'll be 5 different results. So how should you store that 5 results, one results, two results? Okay. I didn't still put in the table 3. Table 3 is for assumption 1. I'm not talking about assumption 2. So assumption 2, if you are going to have an exam after each and every year, what I mean by each and every year is, for example, imagine if it's a 5 years course, at the end of the first year, there's one exam, second year, there's another exam, third year, there's another exam, fourth year, there's another exam, fifth year, there's something else. If that is the situation, then what we can do is we can have another table create another table called. Actually, before you create another table, there's one more thing you should do. Before you create another table, what you should do is you should add a new field. Is my internet lagging? Because I'm getting a call. Add a new field. Why is my internet lagging? Why is my internet lagging at the moment? Okay. Add a new field called enrollment ID. To student underscore subject table. And second change is next, create a new table called results table to store students, to store enrollment ID, comma, uh, marks or results, and in the exam, right? So we can say result and then what do you call the exam name? Okay. Yeah. There's two ways you can mention the answer. One is to add that new enrollment. You can add that field called enrollment ID. Okay, this is option number one. Another option you can do is directly create a new table. Create new table called result with fields, user ID, student number. With fields, student number, comma, subject number, comma, result, comma, exam name. So out of the answers, anything is possible. But I think in this question, they were referring to this. I think in this question, they were referring to assumption one. But you don't have to mention the assumption and you don't have to mention multiple answers. If you mention this answer, also your answer is correct. If you mention this answer, then also your answer is correct. If you mention this answer, then also your answer is correct. Any of the three answers are actually correct. But this is how you answer that question. Okay. I know the answer wrote for assumption one. That's actually the most suitable. Actually, these are the answers they're expecting from you as well. Because normally, if you take courses, in the courses, they have a result at the end of the what you call course only. So, normally the results will be like, you can pass, it just pass, merit pass, first class. Those are how courses you pass. So normally courses they have an exam only at the end of the duration. So if it's a 2 years course at the end of, so most probably they are expecting an answer like this. But again, if you think out of the box and if you wrote an answer like this or if you wrote an answer like this, then also your answer is correct. Any of the three answers are correct. I would recommend writing the first answer because for you all they will not expect you all to think out of the box and think the assumption two, assumption three. But yeah, any of these answers are correct. So out of these three answers, any answer you wrote, your answer is correct. You get 2 marks there. Anyone have any questions here? So the meaning of that last question. They're asking you what is the modification that has to be done for the database. So when they ask modification that has to be done for the database, it's obviously about either it's creating a new table or it's in an existing table, they're going to modify, add a new column or existing table, what do you call reduce a column, something like that. That's what modifications of a database would be. Okay, modifying database, mostly it's adding a new table or modifying any fields in an existing table. These are the two modifications you could do. Anyways, if you have any questions, drop your question in the chat. Others tell me out of 10 marks, how many marks I got here? Good, 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 good. Anyone have any doubts? Any questions? Okay, so with that, we're done for the day. Those who have any questions or can stay and ask, others you can leave. We're done for the day. Good job. Peaceful session. Walaikum salam. Okay, so as I didn't get any questions, I'm going to wind up. But again, if there's anything, you can WhatsApp me. I was really bad at database. Good job. With any other clarifications, you can WhatsApp me to this number and I'll reply to your ASAP. With that, we're done for the day. Is it Yusra? What did she do? Can you imagine? Okay, so with that, we're done for the day. For any questions again, you can WhatsApp me and get them clarified. Have a nice day. Bye.